Hey everyone, welcome to today's session. I'm sharing my screen right now on the personalized video feedback initiative with myself, Eric, and Elise. So you all should have received this document, and what we're going to do today is just go through the document, and then also we have a PowerPoint to show examples of this initiative and what we're looking for and different practices. But basically, as the goals state here in the Word document, there are a couple goals here. One is to create a more visually engaging classroom using personalized video, and you can also include, of course, images and markups that goes toward that goal as well. And also to create a more personalized connection between students and faculty using video technology. So it took a little bit of time to get a real sense from Jen Cooper and Matthew Falcone, the ideas behind this video feedback initiative, and the impetus for it. And I came across something that I just want to share with you guys. It's a video snippet from the virtual faculty conference and from the alumni panel, which for me kind of made me understand one of the main goals of this initiative. So I'm going to play it now.
Advice, I think just continue pursuing that connection between teacher and student, whether through video or recorded reviews. Like it was said before, sometimes the written reviews doesn't have that amount of emotion or passion, and it sometimes feels disconnected. And sometimes people don't express themselves as well as they do through speaking. So trying to record yourself, even if it's just a little audio clip or sharing screenshots with a little audio clip, would really help keep improving that connection and just make it feel like there's a person on the other side. Because sometimes you forget that.
It took me a little while to get back there. So if it wasn't clear, that was a student speaking about their experience in the classroom. And this is one of the main ideas behind using personalized video or using audio, is to convey a certain enthusiasm or a humanizing voice within the classroom and to connect to our students. This personalized video feedback initiative, all programs, including GenEd, are asked to participate in it. And GenEd, though, is I think in a special situation, because for a lot of the programs, video feedback, personalized video feedback really makes sense in terms of giving students constructive feedback within the classroom. But for GenEd, we often find that written feedback is actually more effective. And so the way that we're going to be using the initiative might be a little bit different. And then the other thing I just want to say before we really delve into things is that we've been, asked to participate in this initiative, but it's in a sense still in development in that we're exploring the best ways of using video feedback in the classrooms. And so we hope that as you guys start participating, that you'll share with us some ideas about how you feel it can be used effectively. So I don't know if Eric or Elise, if you want to go through, if I can give it over to you and you can go through some of the document, and then at some point I can share the PowerPoint.
Sure, I can start.
Okay.
So the goal is to create a visually engaging classroom and encourage a more personal connection between students and faculty using video technology. Considering that our student base is very artistic and graphic design and photography and all that has to do with a lot of visual stuff. This is sort of to try to, I guess, bridge that gap between the standard flat platform that we have and make it more personal. It is a little intimidating, or can feel a little intimidating when you're doing it. But if you think about the reality of if you were teaching in a live classroom, students would be looking at you the whole time. It's easier to sort of get over that anxiety of creating these videos. And as somebody who is not necessarily as technologically sound as others, I was pretty intimidated by this whole task, but I sat down last night and did set up my classroom with it. And I don't think it went nearly as bad as I anticipated. So you can kind of, I think probably as my videos went along, I got more and more personal, and some of my personality came out where I'm kind of a jokester, or I made light of a situation and then talked about the discussion. But I definitely think that if the students view the videos, they're going to feel like I'm giving them more personal one-on-one and less of a copy-paste kind of general statement. Even if I'm saying it, the same thing over and over, it's going to have a different sound to it than when you read it and you feel like, oh, this person just sort of slapped in a standardized feedback sentence. So the timeline: by August of 2018, all faculty will be using personalized video feedback regularly and consistently in their classrooms. So this is sort of what you decide to make of it. I know that for me, with the milestone assignments and with the weekly assignments, whether it's a standard class or a pinnacle class, in terms of giving the feedback, I think with the amount of papers that students write, what's going to work most effectively for me is to do maybe a video voiceover while I'm going over the paper and grading it, so that they actually have the tangible paper in their hand that has the markups on it and some commentary to go along with it. But it's really sort of what you decide to make it. But the more you kind of get into it and get comfortable with it, the easier it's going to be. And by August, for those of you teaching some July classes, you'll get to sort of exercise your muscles in that area. But by August, we're anticipating everyone's going to be more increasingly comfortable with doing this and providing this kind of feedback. So as stated in the 2018 Faculty Standards document, in Learning Path Welcome Page, recommended best practice video introduction accompanied by a brief text. So the reason for the brief text is to kind of reiterate what you're saying in the video. For some students that might be coming with ADA accommodations are probably going to need the text because maybe they have hearing impairments, or maybe their computer technology isn't going to play the video as easily as somebody else's. So the brief text accompanying it will be nice. Use creative visual feedback that includes audio, video, and screen capture technology tools to assist in student learning by using examples, marking up work, demonstrating correct methods, as well as other feedback techniques to provide clear and useful instruction. Apply best practice methods consistently. So for some of these introductory videos that you're using for the assignments, you can likely reuse those over and over because you're just introducing the actual topic. But for the individualized feedback, we want you to address students accordingly and specific to their actual assignments. And so those will have to be sort of recreated every time. I did notice last night when I was doing it that initially I might have re-recorded a video 4 or 5 times trying to get it right. And then once I just kind of accepted the fact that even in person, I make mistakes, and so it's okay to just kind of talk through it and relax a little bit. I worried less about the videos being perfect, and the more I worried less about them being perfect, the better they became, and the quicker I was able to go through them. So does anybody have any questions about any of that stuff so far? Hannah, with everybody muted, I don't know if there's any hands raised or anything like that. I don't see anything in the discussion chat part.
Right. Jeremy, we'll share resources at the end, but thank you for providing that link. Oh, Mike O'Donnell would like to be unmuted. And if anybody would like to be unmuted, we can certainly do that. Okay, I will unmute you there, Mike. So you're unmuted right now.
Yep. Okay. I have a few questions. Shall we wait to the end, or shall we just hit you with a few questions now?
Hit them up.
Okay.
I said hit them up just because it might trigger something that we've already discussed.
Okay. Let me see what I can trigger. So I think I get a pretty good idea of what you're up to. My question though is sheer volume. So let's say I have 3 English courses, 20 students per. It's not that you require 20 videos per week times 3, that's 60, times 5. You can see how the numbers make it potentially unwieldy if we're producing a lot of videos. So it's not as if each student each week must receive a video. So for example, at present, I'll lead off a milestone with a few paragraphs that say, okay, gang, this is what to expect from this week's milestone. And it's fairly simple, but it may shed a bit more light on what they should be doing. You can see that either replaced with a video or supplemented with a video. And if it's supplemented with a video, how much different is the information presenting that milestone supposed to be? Or would you prefer that I maintain the lead-in information for the milestone and then, and I think Hannah, it was you who suggested a follow-up summary so that they, instead of battling each other, they're working together in unison. That's kind of the first question.
So
I'll try to tackle that one. So I think there are 2 different pieces to the video requirements. So the first piece that you touched upon are the introductory videos. So you'll have video announcements within the classroom. You'll have your video introductions to given tasks or milestones, which, by the way, you wouldn't have to do unless there isn't already a built-in video into that task or milestone. So within the Pinnacle model, some courses were designed to incorporate videos directly into task and milestone directions. If that's the case, there's no requirement to make a video for that. If there isn't one, though, you would need a video. The other piece that you're talking about is individualized feedback to each student. So the other requirement we haven't covered yet in this meeting is on a weekly basis, each student needs to receive individualized feedback once via video. So in a class of 20, like you said, that'd be 20 individual videos per week. And then times 3 across 3 classes, that'd be 60 videos per week if you had 3 classes of 20. Some of our classes are even larger than that and have closer to 30, sometimes 34 students, which is a lot of videos. So really, I think the heart of your question is efficiency. How do I get this done in a timely manner? So going back to the first requirement with setting up your courses, I would potentially recommend rolling a few video topics into one. So within my class, for instance, I had decided to create videos by milestone. Basically, I'd do a milestone video announcement, and in that announcement, I'll talk about everything that they're going to do throughout that milestone. And then depending on the complexity of the tasks in the milestone submission, I may at the same time just roll into a discussion of, in a video, walking through those tasks and how to do them, and giving my support and referring them to extra resources, that sort of thing, all in one. So I could potentially construct one video that is the milestone announcement and also the introductory announcement for the task and the milestones of that entire milestone, depending on how convenient that is. Now, if it's particularly complex, I may break it into a few different videos because I'd like to tackle it piece by piece and not overwhelm students all at once, because we don't want gigantic videos ideally. But that's one way you could try to streamline the videos that you're making. The nice thing about that, though, is once you make those video announcements and your video introductions for different tasks and milestones, they'll be reusable forever. So we see that as less of a burden as the individualized feedback. that you'll have to provide on a weekly basis. So talking about efficiency of how to do that, like you said, I think you described if, let's say you're in a course, you're in the English composition course you're teaching, and you provide written feedback probably as the ideal means of suggesting how students could revise their paper, because in an English course, we want to model appropriate writing as well, and that can be accomplished best through revisions directly in a Word document, whether they be track changes or offering comments, that sort of thing. So video feedback is probably less than ideal in an English course is my point. So how do you make this efficient, and how do you include these videos for all these students in a way that's seamless and not double work? Because like you said, if you provide your task level feedback and then you make a video to supplement that, that's one way to go about doing so. You're doing two things. One, you're doing the written feedback, and then you're creating a video, which is basically having to review each assignment or do work for each assignment twice. But an alternative is potentially at the end of a milestone, you would have to grade it. So at that point, instead of providing any written feedback, one thing you might consider is just creating a video summary using perhaps the video note feature in the gradebook. And that would be probably the closest thing to efficiency I could come up with in the composition course, because at that point you could just provide a brief summary of, okay, here's how you did in your revised paper for the milestone submission. You tackled X and Y nicely, but maybe you could have done further revisions to point Z that I made at the task level. So because you will have created that video, you wouldn't need to write anything in the gradebook. So in that instance, rather than it being double work, it's replacing your written feedback that you would have done typically, if that makes sense. So that's one way you could try to make it more efficient. Find ways to include the video in your classes where you won't have to write anything because you made the video instead. But alternatively, you could make those supplemental videos at the task level, for instance, where you provide your written feedback and then you do a brief overview of it in an extra video, which again is two things for each assignment, but maybe that would be more effective and you just prefer to do it that way. It's really up to you. You have a lot of flexibility to figure out where you want to provide this video feedback, but in terms of thinking about efficiency, I would think about it in terms of how can I create a video that will allow me to not have to write anything, so that way I'm saving as much time as possible. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, it did. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it does address that, but I think that's more appropriate in a milestone situation when you're going from the task, which is then the revision, to the milestone submission, because if there's no changes, your video can basically say there really weren't any changes to your paper, my feedback is the same. In a regular standard class that's still on a week-by-week basis where you don't have that revision process, it might look a little bit different. So it really just depends on the class that you're teaching. But because in the regular class, you're still going to, when they submit that weekly paper at the end of the week, you're still going to end up needing to submit the paper with the markups on it for them like you would in the task portion of a milestone class.
Okay, it's starting to come together. Here's an idea, Eric, and as I was listening to it, and I'm glad you recognized the danger that there could be redundancy, which certainly is the case if we're providing text-based commentary, let's say on a paper or a fictional story. It's then you put in a Word document with track edits, and then here now we have a video, so that's kind of overwhelming. But I do like the idea of then preferably placing a video feedback. But how about this for an idea? Video feedback only in the milestone submission. And let me see if I can logic my way through this. The reason there is that by this time, the student has already turned in the task submission and hopefully has then applied the instructor and the student comments to the milestone. At that point, then you can, with your video commentary, review the rubric and say, listen, your task was strong. However, I see that with this milestone submission, we didn't quite make it over the hump regarding this particular area that I had previously commented on. So let's see if we can address that. Does that make a bit more sense? Okay, first part of the question. And second part is that if in fact a student requires supplemental instruction within, let's say, a task, that would justify the video inclusion. That way, every student, even students who are doing beautiful work, do not simply receive videos that say, hey, Susie, man, you really knocked it out of the park. Keep up the good work. Videos like that don't really serve a purpose. So I hope that, what do you think, Eric? Videos only in milestone submission areas?
I think what you described makes sense, and that's a good opportunity to include a video. It's going to depend, though, I think, on the nature of the course. So sometimes the video could be more useful potentially at the task level, and it could be the most efficient. It's going to depend. And the other thing to keep in mind is in the composition course, like we're discussing, there are 6 milestones, which means 1 video per week in the milestone area makes sense. But other courses are only 3 milestones. So
right.
If you only do the videos in the milestone area there, that satisfies 3 weeks worth of videos. But what about the other 3 weeks? So you'd have to find another place to put the other video to satisfy those requirements. So I think it will depend.
I just want to jump in about your last comment of the like, hey, Susie, you're doing a great job, and that's maybe not a useful use of video. And I'm actually going to disagree here. I mean, I think we have several different options. One, as we've discussed for milestone submissions, is to completely replace written feedback with video feedback. So you really go into content with the student in your video. I think another option could be you get rid of, say in the discussion, you have a markup of a paper, or you have written notes on a paper, and you use video in that kind of lighter way, in a way to replace the greetings that we would normally use. So normally we would say, hey, so and so, thank you for submitting your work. I see some great things happening here. Here's an attachment with more feedback. The next step is this. So instead of typing that out, you would have like literally a 30-second video saying that. Because I just want us to keep in mind that one of the goals is a personalized connection with our students. And we don't want to force video as feedback if it's not the most effective way of giving feedback. And so I do kind of think it is okay. I mean, maybe Elise and Eric, you might disagree, to use video feedback in this sort of more superficial way of just greeting the student, telling them what you've given them, giving them a next step.
So Hannah, I am going to agree with you, but here's what we don't want to say in agreeing with it. What we don't want to say is that it's okay to just be like, hey, good job, awesome, and then that's it.
Right.
But let's say so I think all of us, when we were talking about it, agreed that it's okay, but we don't want to set the precedent that it's all you need. So, for example, for me, with the written paper being the final assignment of the week, and I feel that it's more appropriate for that written paper to have the markups on the paper and attach it like I've always done, because that gives the students the best hands-on feedback. My video is going to say, was looking at your paper, and maybe there were some spelling errors and you want to check on some grammatical things, but you actually hit the content right where it needed to be and made the APA corrections that we talked about. So good job. And then what they're going to see in the grade book would be that little video that just kind of gives a brief overview, the attachment of the paper that has the actual markups, and the rubric, and that's it. So just like Hannah's saying, it replaces some of what we're already doing. And I know I'm an incredibly fast typer, so I feel like I can type faster than I can talk. But when I was doing some of the videos last night, they actually go pretty quick. Like, we're not looking for things to be 8 minutes long. And I'm going to be the the bearer of news on time limits, in terms of, I have 2 teenagers who, if you don't get it taken care of in the first couple of minutes, you've lost them. So we don't need rambling on videos that are going over the paper while you're talking and it's technically double the work. So if that makes sense, Mike, I think you basically are going to, you know, handle whatever you think is the best way to get the message to the student, whether it's the markups on the paper or your verbal feedback, and the other thing will just complement what you are doing. So, you know, I personally, I don't think I want to watch 10 minutes of anybody's video either. So when we're looking at these, we're looking for it to just be like casual and informative, and not so rigid and dry. So show some of your personality and just kind of, you know, discuss the topics.
I wonder, there are a bunch of questions about what do these videos look like? Where are they webcam? Are they screen share? And I'm wondering if maybe I should just go through the presentation a little bit and we can just stop at different points, because I think some of these questions will be answered.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that'd be best. And then we can come back and hit all the questions. There are quite a few, which I think will be answered largely in the presentation.
Okay. Okay, so, you know, I think most of us are familiar with the welcome video because we had a big initiative a couple of years ago about including a welcome video. And that's just a reminder that that's part of this personalized video feedback initiative, is to also include a welcome video. And again, this can be either a webcam, so that's an image of yourself speaking, or it can be a screen share where you're recording the classroom or a PowerPoint presentation. And you can place this in the faculty bio or the welcome page, or both. And the idea is a short, friendly introduction to class. And for those of you who have questions about the length of the video and all of that, shorter is better. But there's, in that Word document that we emailed out, there's a best practices that address some of those issues. So here's a screenshot of my faculty bio with my welcome video. And I did it personally, a combination of a PowerPoint and a talking head of myself. But you know, whatever you think is most effective. And I think my video is like 3 minutes long, just as an example. So personalized video feedback, which is what we really, you know, started talking about a few moments ago. And again, either a webcam, so that's an image of yourself, or a screen share can be used. And one key is that it has to be embedded so that students literally see a video, like the rectangle video. And as we just mentioned, it can be either in the discussion threads or in the gradebook. And then we talked about this, that the idea is to use it to the greatest effect. So, you know, if you find that for a particular assignment, that video could be a good tool for delivering constructive feedback, then use it toward that end. Or you can make it a personal connection with your students, where you're sharing your enthusiasm for the subject matter, you're sharing resources, you're telling next steps. We just discussed all of this. But, you know, I think it should not replace written commentary if that's the more effective delivery of feedback. So we don't want, I guess my own concern for myself and my faculty are to always keep in mind what is most effective for the student, and to try to insert video feedback in a way that doesn't undercut practices that we're doing now that are really effective. And that's why the milestone submission, since in the Pinnacle model, we put so much emphasis on task feedback so that students can really excel for their milestone submission, then the milestone submission might be a good place for the video feedback if you're going to give narrative or more constructive feedback. Elise and Eric, I don't know if you want to add anything to this slide or correct me with anything that I just said.
I think you're on it. I know that I was apprehensive about the tools that are even in the actual class, but I kind of like them because from what I understand, if we use the video in the class, it will let us know if it's been viewed, and that to me is incredibly helpful advice or feedback to have on the videos, not only to give that feedback to us, but to be able to address a student when I can say to them, because I don't know if they've, read what I wrote, but I can see if they're listening to what I'm saying.
Right.
And then go ahead.
Oh, what I was just going to say is that unfortunately, what I think is the easiest way to include video, it's a little bit difficult to see if students have viewed it or not. I mean, it depends, but if you use capture within Brightspace, it will give you statistics on who has viewed the video. If you use a third party like Screencast-O-Matic, that will give you feedback. If you insert or upload a video, or if you use Video Note, that won't. But it's also hard to say if they've actually watched it in full or they're paying attention. I mean, in a sense, I just wonder, like, we have to trust with our written feedback that it's being reviewed. We have to, in a way, do the same with our video. Oops. Okay, so I just wanted to give some examples here. So Eric and Mike and Elise talked about having video in the grade book for the milestone submission. So here's a screenshot that Eric provided of how he used video. And here he uses a webcam video using Video Note. And in a moment, I'll show you how you can get to Video Note. There's also embedding a screen share within the discussion board. So you can embed either a webcam video note within the discussion board, or you can embed a screen share. And so this is Rochelle Starr's. And Elise, you had mentioned as one possible use of video is to record as you're giving annotations or marking up student work. And that's what Rochelle has. You can see that Rochelle has done that here. She's marked up the student's paper and is doing a video discussing it.
Yeah, and in the discussion threads, you can use that same video thing that you just showed for Eric, the video note.
Yes.
And it embeds it right in there for you, and it's really simple, actually. Like, it was kind of effortless.
Yeah. And I have just some screenshots that can get you started on that at the end of showing you how simple it is. So so the other part of this initiative are the assignment overview video tutorials, which Eric talked a little bit about. So you're introducing concepts, you're providing tips and expectations for a particular assignment. And our best practice is to embed these tips into the learning path itself. And I'm going to show you a screenshot of that in a moment. And I just want to say why. Many of us put videos and information into the discussion threads, in the starter thread, I should say, of the discussion area, which certainly works. But what's great about having a file on the learning path is that when you set up your class, you can copy course content from a previous session, and you just have all of that material automatically there. And in your starter threads, you can always link back to these assignment tip pages. So this is Nancy Tosh's assignment tips for her milestone 1 submission. And she's, in this case, included outside videos with some assignment tips. And in a moment, I'll show you my own page. So we also kind of want to point out, as part of this, even though this initiative is called personalized video feedback, and that's really our focus, it has made us think about other ways we can use the classroom, enrich the classroom, give enriched feedback. So I just want to point out to folks the learner resources section on the learning path that shows up on the home page. So this is Angie Sullivan's homepage of her class, and you can see on the right hand side she's added a lot of information here, and some of these can be videos. If they're a general video that addresses a concept or something that can be applied to the entire class for the duration of the class, this is a great area. So here, she has help using a webcam or video editing software, UCU guide, which they use in their classroom. So that's a good place to put you could put some of your videos. And again, as you do your course setup, you just do copy content from a previous class, and it will appear there.
Hannah, is there a way that if there's a standard thing like how to use the webcam or video editing software that we could possibly push to have that put in the template so that it's not something they have to do every time? If it's something that every class can use.
Yeah, I think if it's I think that we could talk to Jacob about that, of making sure that resource is just automatically part of the master class. Is that what you mean?
I think it is what you
Okay.
mean.
I muted myself and then couldn't get to the button. I was like, no.
Right.
So yes, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Eric.
Yeah, we can do that. We can definitely do that. Here's, gosh, I think I'm a little bit out of, sorry, my slide is out of order, but here's an example of my assignment tips. And it's a file that I created in the learning path. So here's an example of what I mean of hosting your video tutorials, your assignment tips in a file in the learning path. You can see here that I personalized it with an emoji. I make sure that it has my name so it's very clear. Here I embedded a video that just, gives students an introduction to this task. And another important part to this is you can actually go in and edit the file and put a link to this page on your assignment instructions, because otherwise students might miss it. If they click submit, then they won't run into your assignment tips. Okay. And then this isn't about video necessarily, but just to have a visually engaging classroom, which is part of this initiative. And part of what Elise talked about of recognizing our student population is for the most part working in design and aesthetics and respond to that. And so using images and announcements is a really simple and easy way of doing that. And of course you can include a video here as well. And also keeping in mind certain best practices, like in Brightspace, announcements don't really work if they have a ton of information. So here, I really like, this is Maria Labarge's classroom, and she does a fantastic job here, just having a little snippet and an image for her announcement here. And if she wanted to have more information, she could have a link to course resources or a link to her assignment tips that's in the learning path. Okay. So now kind of getting down to practical tools here. And in the Word document that we started with, I guess I could get to it here. There's a whole list of recording options, including what's in Brightspace, third-party video software, audio software, and then how to share your videos. I'm just going to talk here about what, at this point in time, for the faculty training committee, we've kind of figured are the best or the recommended tools. If you're using a webcam, using the Brightspace video note is super efficient and fast. And we've recently extended the recording time. I think it used to be 3 minutes and now it's 6 minutes. So it really gives you some time to do a recording. It's super easy to use. I'll show a screenshot in a moment. And then in terms of doing a screen share, I personally have found that Capture is a little clunky to use, and so I haven't used Capture. I'm a big fan of Screencast-O-Matic. There's a free version which you can use really effectively, and then the paid version is not that much money if you want, some bells and whistles. So that's my personal recommendation for screen share. But the bottom line is that if you are, familiar with any video tool, whether it's just using Game Bar on your PC or QuickTime on your Mac or Snagit or whatever, we're not forcing anyone to use any particular tool. Use what you find to be most effective. There is one caveat though, which is Jing. Unfortunately, we have just had tremendous issues with Jing effectively embedded within posts and feedback, and also with students being able to view Jing videos. So for those of you who use Jing and really like Jing, Snagit might be an option for you because it's also created by TechSmith. Okay, so this is the easiest way to embed your video or audio, and even to record your video if you're using Video Note. And that's in any window, you'll see this little play button, and that's the insert stuff button. So here you can insert the webcam video and it'll record you right then and there using Video Note. If you use Screencast-O-Matic or another third-party software, just save your file as an MP4 video and you can upload it using My Computer really easily. There are some best practices about this that are on the Word document that you'll need to just look over. You have to make sure to determine the pixel length, for example, and it has to be an MP4, but it's super, super simple. And then you might be using a program that gives you an embed code, HTML code. Insert stuff, again, is your area to just click on that. You need to scroll down to find this. Unfortunately, it's the last option. I don't know why, because it's a very useful one. But there it is. You can just insert your embed code. So, maybe that was my last that was my last slide. So that's just the overview of some of the tools and some of the options that we have.
Hannah, before we get started on questions, I do want to just go back to something Mike said initially in the beginning when we talked about the exponential amount of videos and things we'll have to be doing when you have 20 or more students, and sometimes they're teaching 2-3 classes at a time for the full-timers. That is something we very much took into consideration and very much fought for as GenEd, because we are a different animal a little bit than some of the other programs who maybe have less students per class, and it seems a little bit more manageable, and they have artwork and things are going over and not necessarily papers. So it seemed like it was a little more feasible in those classes. but we've been kind of tasked with stepping up to the plate and not treating ourselves as different. And so what we're really asking for is everybody to just get in there and try to get dirty with figuring out how to do this stuff. And we plan on flushing some things out in the next month or two when we say what works and what doesn't work. And you might find that just like when you first taught a class, the learning curve, it felt like you were in the class for 30 hours a week, and then the more classes you taught, it was more like 15 hours a week, 10, 15 hours, that with time, we will get the hang of this. And I'll tell you, I'm not a believer, at least I wasn't at first. And then when I went through it last night, I thought I could probably get through grading a lot quicker if I'm just talking about what's wrong with stuff. So for some of us, depending on the assignments and the way the class goes, it might actually go quicker than what we're used to once we get the hang of it.
And that's actually the feedback of faculty in the different program disciplines who have had to use video feedback for years. You know, some of them, foundations, for example, they actually find that it's more effective and it takes less time than written feedback, and they prefer it. And so that might become the case.
One other thing we haven't mentioned in this presentation, as an alternative option for including video, particularly in big classes. So if you are in a class with 16 or more students, one thing you could choose to do is, if there's a discussion in your course, you could create video clusters of 4 or 5 students where you make one video for those 4 or 5 students and address them all at once, particularly if there are similarities between the things that they did in their assignments. That would be an option to make fewer videos, but it would replace or satisfy the individual video requirement for every student once per week. So that's something you can do. We did get permission for that. I'm not sure how effective that will end up being, as opposed to doing the individualized feedback. And it could be difficult depending on what course you're teaching to implement that. So for instance, in a course where you're trying to provide task level feedback for them to revise their paper, you may want to provide that individualized video, one student at a time, so they can so you can really speak directly to them and what they did. But maybe you notice 4 or 5 students struggling with one particular issue, then maybe you could hit all of them at once with that video. So that's an option in bigger classes that you can potentially implement. Not sure how effective it would be, but something to keep up your sleeves just in case. Also, we had a question that I don't think has been addressed. The question was, if a student isn't participating, do we need to create a video as the outreach feedback, asking them to contact us and get in touch, etc.? No. The goal of the video initiative is to provide feedback, I think, on assignments themselves, and enriched feedback. So I don't think that would apply to phone outreach effectively. If a student doesn't show up, I think they're basically forfeiting the chance to get a video. Is that what you guys think, Elise and Hannah?
So I do, but I definitely don't want to say that and then not have anything in there, because I've reviewed classes where people, if it's a 0, they just don't put any feedback, and that's not something we can do either. So if you're not going to do a video saying, I called you and left a message or whatever, and I, shot you an email, please get back to me so I can help you get back on track, then you need to at least say, put the outreach in the text box. If it's later in the course and it's someone you've already done outreach with and you're still getting 0s, I still feel like that needs a sentence in the text box that just says something. So I don't want it to be blank, but it could be your choice, I suppose, if it's video or text.
We had a follow-up question about the group critiques. How do you post to groups? Or are you referring to reusing the videos for similar issues? So the group critique, it actually comes out of an initiative from a few years ago addressing really large class sizes and how to handle discussion board threads, where you as an instructor go through student work and group it. So you might have a discussion board post to 4 students, for example, who have similar issues, and you create a video addressing those students. So I hope that so you might want to reuse the video. You could do that. I guess that would be one way, is that you could just copy and paste the same video into those students, or you could make it a separate thread.
Right. The group posting technique is in the discussion area, not the gradebook.
Right.
And
right.
I think that once we converted courses to the Pinnacle model, it hasn't been as effective, because before, the discussion questions were isolated and didn't directly lead into the next assignment or milestone submission, where you needed to provide personalized feedback for them to revise it. So I think it used to make more sense for tackling multiple posts at once. Whereas now, since you really need to provide that individualized feedback to each student anyway, creating those group posts doesn't naturally lend to itself, I guess. It just doesn't seem to fit in as well with the Pinnacle model, in my opinion. You're still free to do it, but you'd still need to also offer that individualized feedback. So in a sense, it's like going above and beyond to make groups in addition to providing individualized feedback.
Yeah, I've never found that an efficient way of doing it. Even though it's supposed to save time, I think theoretically, I haven't found a way personally for that to work. Norm wants to ask a question. Norm, I think you're unmuted already. If you want to just go ahead and ask.
Absolutely, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I am a firm believer of video feedback, and that's why in the Pinnacle review of Math 1010, I created extensive videos. I wrote the script for each of them to put in the course. I'm also working with NIIT to create small videos. I understand that videos should not be long, otherwise it will be boring. So we're talking about 8-minute videos that will tackle every concept. We're talking about like 20 to 30 videos per milestone. So here's the math situation. It's very specific. I think Eric answered many of the issues with math in the context of other courses, but I want to put everything together. First is we don't have a discussion except for the questions discussion and the introduction discussion. So we don't have topic specific discussions. And even when we move to Pinnacle, which is hopefully soon, we will not have discussions. So the next point is I'm going to address the courses as they exist as well as the Pinnacle, because we're following the same methodology for the courses that exist now, except that we're removing my math lab. So my math lab has a video from Pearson, a small video that will discuss every single problem. The problems are algorithmically generated, which is the case in the Pinnacle model, meaning that the students will not get the same question again. However, they will get a similar question under the same topic. So for example, if a student is having a problem solving systems of linear equations using substitution, the first question they will get, if they answered incorrectly, they will get a similar question about the same subtopic, but the numbers will be different. So the numbers always change, even in the new Pinnacle model, while we're not using my math lab, which makes the personalized videos, they go obsolete very quickly because the questions change. And also the inclusion of the already made videos. So I like the idea of videos. I think they will help a lot, especially with math, visualizing it and walking them through it. However, I am not sure how to make them personalized. I think that the students, since the class is divided into very tiny subtopics, every milestone is divided into small subtopics, the feedback will be like, the students will be struggling with one small concept, solving systems of equations using substitution. So I don't think we can make personalized videos in that context. I think they would have to be general enough because you're using one method. The numbers will change all the time.
Well, I think Norm, that this is a case where it might be more effective to use the personalized video to make a personal connection with your students and to maybe convey enthusiasm for the subject, to remind them of resources, and you might not be using it for very specific feedback.
I agree, and that's exactly my dilemma, because it will not be personalized. Like Eric mentioned, it's going to be like group of students. So if a group of students is struggling with substitution, they will receive the same video. Another group of students in the same milestone or the same week are having problems with elimination, solving systems of equation using elimination. They will receive the same video. And so it will be cluster-based, but not personal, not individualized.
Well, I mean, that's where, you might want to have a video that addresses, if you've created a video that addresses that topic, say, you still might want to create, I mean, we are asked to use this video to make personalized connections. So you could say, John, Mary, and Susan, you're doing great work on this. I can see that there's some issues with this concept. Please watch this video. And then you have a video right there that you've already pre-made that you reuse. But they're hearing their voice. I mean, they're hearing their name being said by you. I mean, Matthew and Jen were very clear about that the idea behind this initiative is to humanize the classroom, to make a personal connection with students.
I see. Okay.
I know that that's a little bit of a cumbersome workflow. I mean, we just have to figure things out, I mean, that's one thing. And we really are looking to you guys to see what you find personally effective in using these tools.
Well, I think it would be effective if we use the written feedback with a personalized video. So, hi, Mary. I see that you struggled with the substitution concept. Here's a video to help you with it. And then in the video, it will be, greetings, this
Right.
is how, here are two problems. So we can combine text feedback with video feedback.
Right. Yes. Yeah, that makes sense.
I have another quick question. Some of the videos will not be 8 minutes long. The example I gave, solving problems using substitution, is going to be about 12 to 15 minutes long. And that's just because the nature of the problem we're addressing.
Okay. I mean, I think, these are guidelines. And, you might find that and the other option too with something like that, which I found effective because I've certainly created tutorials that have been like in the end 15 minutes long, is to break it up into 5-minute segments, part 1, part 2, part 3. I don't know if your material lends itself to that, but that's something that you might want to explore.
I'm talking about one problem. So if I'm solving one problem, it might take.
I see. Well, yeah, I mean, it's use your best judgment. I mean, you guys are all subject matter experts in your courses. You will know how to use, trust yourself to know that how to use videos effectively. And if you find that it's better to have a longer video in a particular instance, then go with it. Before we we might, there's still a few questions that need to be answered. I understand that some people might need to leave at the top of the hour, and I just want to say a couple of things before we leave. One is your sandbox should still be accessible to you. And that's a great place to experiment with stuff if you're nervous about experimenting in the classroom. So creating a file with assignment tips, trying out video note, embedding videos. You can do all of that in your sandbox. The other thing I just want to say is that the faculty training committee has started hosting and archiving trainings that address these tools. We have a whole bunch coming up this week. We have resources here at the end of this document, but it's going to be continually updated in the faculty training center. And so I know that I'll be sharing with my faculty some of those trainings, and Elise and Eric, I'll make sure to copy you on that. Let's see, are there more questions? I'm just,
I think so. I think we've addressed a lot of them naturally, but one question I don't think was addressed was by Ken Bolt. I'm not sure if he's still here. His question was, will Premiere be available from the school? I'm not sure what Premiere is. Hannah or Elise,
I can answer that.
Yeah,
I can answer that, yeah. Premiere is an Adobe product, and yes, it's part of everyone's free Creative Cloud subscription. So absolutely. We don't, Jeremy, who I think hopefully is still on the call, I think he's experimented with it a little bit. It's a very, very robust software. And so we haven't focused on training on that because it offers so much more than one really needs. But you can certainly use it, absolutely.
Another question was, would audio alone be sufficient instead of including video? I think the goal to keep in mind here, and what Jen and Matthew have in mind when we think about enriched feedback, is audio visual. So I would say no to audio alone. However, that doesn't mean you have to do a video. So alternatively, and when I say video, a video of you talking into the camera, or it doesn't have to be a screen share per se. You could do audio and then also include images in the gradebook or the discussion area to supplement it. Or you could do a PowerPoint presentation, which may not be the most efficient way to respond to a student, but you could embed audio into that because that's a built-in feature of PowerPoint. So that's a way you could combine audio and visual without doing a video per se. I think video would be the most efficient, but some combination of audio and visual is what they're looking for.
I know I have a lot of faculty who use audio, and I would say one thing to keep in mind is that we have as a best practices for enriched feedback here to include, if you can, to include an image or markup with that audio, and to very clearly identify the use of audio. There are a couple of tools that we list here that you can use for audio, Vocaroo and Sherbet, where you can actually embed the audio into the feedback. I don't know if I misspoke earlier about the question about Premiere. I don't know if I mentioned Captivate instead of Premiere. That's another Adobe product that people have mentioned, but I don't think that that's part of our subscription.
Allison asked if there's a way to screen share that's built into Brightspace. I think Capture allows you to screen share. I think I've done a video where it's both a video of my screen and myself at the same time in the corner. And that's how I set up my announcements actually and things like that in my class. Although Jeremy is saying Capture is not working or available right now, I'm not aware of that. Are you aware of any issues with Capture right now, Elise or Hannah?
I know. I think I just never use it personally, so I haven't tried it recently.
Oh, I think you meant Captivate, not Capture.
Oh,
right.
Okay.
Captivate isn't available.
Right.
Yep.
That's an Adobe product. That's not. Capture should be available. And you can, Nancy asks if you can upload Capture videos to the LOR. And absolutely, you can do that. And I mean, there are a couple of, as much as I'm personally frustrated with Capture, there are a lot of good things about it. that you can store it to the LOR and you can reuse those videos. So for video tutorials, that might be effective. As I mentioned earlier, you can see if folks have watched the video and how many folks have watched your video, which is helpful. And it is in every Brightspace classroom. And so if you struggle with installing software at all, it's a built-in option for us.
Right. It's not as efficient as Video Note. That's much faster, but Capture is available as an option if you want to screen share. I think we've hit most questions.
Okay.
And right, if you feel that you talking to the students, because a video of yourself isn't as effective as a screen share where you're, pointing at specific facets of a work of art or whatever it is that you're looking at, then right, maybe screen share would be the best option for you. If that's what you'd prefer to use in that instance.
And Screencast-O-Matic, even though it's third party, it's really efficient. It's a great tool. So it can very seamlessly work in or be integrated into your workflow.
Right. I think it boils down to finding what works for you, and once you get into that rhythm, it'll start to get faster and hopefully more efficient. All right. Well, I think that is it. Any other questions before we conclude? All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining. If you have any questions or encounter any problems, or you're just wondering how best to integrate video into your courses, and again, there's a lot of flexibility in how you can go about doing that, just feel free to reach out to us and we'll be happy to talk you through it. All right. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.